Persona 5 Royal is a visually and auditorily dynamic amalgam of Japanese game design over the last 10 years. If you like JRPGs, dating sims, anime, and hand-holding, you'll love Persona 5 Royal. If not, you'll quickly see the Skinner box and spreadsheets that lie beneath the high-contrast aesthetic of this 100-plus hour exercise in patience. For those of you who've never played a Persona game, Megami Tensei has now created 5 installments, not counting re-releases with additional content, of Persona, a series of bright and visually distinct JRPGs, the later editions of which add a heaping helping of slice-of-life/dating simulator. The series by and large is critically acclaimed and considered by many to be essential on the must-play list for RPG fans. It's often compared to Final Fantasy, but save for the most basic elements, Persona as a series, for better or worse, shares little in common with the questionably named non-contiguous saga of spiky-haired angsters. Though Persona is not without its own considerable cast of creatively coiffed curmudgeons. One key difference is combat. Persona is faster paced, doing away with active time battles, which in my personal opinion are the bane of JRPGs in the post-Final Fantasy X era. It takes a decidedly more tactical approach to combat, prioritizing enemy weaknesses and buff-debuff mechanics to overcome challenging fights. With higher stakes and greater swings, some see this as a refreshing break from the time investment equals difficulty design philosophy that's found so commonly in JRPG battle mechanics. Another major deviation from the Final Fantasy Bible is the inclusion of character improvement as a core element of gameplay. JRPGs have basically been RPGs in name only since as far back as the genre had a name. You typically just leveled up characters through a series of challenges with almost no involvement in their character development, and then press the go button through dialogue until you were allowed to do something. Not exactly taking control of the story. But Persona's addition of personality stats, social links, and giving dialogue choices create an effective illusion of choice in the role-playing. But that's exactly what it is. An illusion. You see, there are right and wrong answers to nearly every choice in this game, and these are largely measured in awarded points. Some choices have literally no impact whatsoever on the follow-up dialogue, and the ones that do are often quickly forgotten in the continuous stream of exposition and backstory dumps. This feeling of right and wrong answers is present through the whole of the Persona series. Combat, the personas you choose, the romances, the friendships, all of it feels like a thin veneer of freedom over the crushing pressure of bureaucracy and math that is the core razor's edge gameplay loop, leaving you constantly feeling like you're missing something or not living up to your full potential, like talking to my dad about my career as an internet personality. You're carried through the game by two things: story incentive and reward mechanics. Anyone who's played a Japanese mobile game in the last decade has a basic understanding of the underlying game design pervasive in the Persona franchise. A Skinner box of carefully managed reward schedules and randomization designed to keep you playing for one more day, one more level, one more battle. This is even present in the story segments of the game, which become increasingly separated from normal gameplay. Characters mete out small helpings of story and character development concealed behind paywalls, and progress demands a certain level of guts or kindness or charm to move forward, perform X number of good deeds to unlock your next character development ration, which comes packaged with some nominal gameplay boost. These mechanics aren't bad, they're not even unpleasant. What they are is exploitative and manipulative. For those who only have a few hours a day to play their games or want their games to be instantly rewarding experiences that draw you in and keep you pumping in the proverbial quarters, these games fill a very essential niche. But whether the experience is pleasant or not has little bearing on whether the game is good or not, from as close as we can get to an objective point of view. You heard it here first. I am the objective authority on good. Now, there are many compelling and beautiful elements to Persona 5 Royal in particular, and the Persona series in general, but these typically feel like afterthoughts that are kind of tacked on. Mechanics, story, plot, and gameplay, each well designed in their own right, have limited cohesion, feeling instead like four separate experiences glued together, unsightly seams still in full view. Another major flaw, and granted possibly a funding issue, is the game's apparent lack of effort to create pleasing dialogue for its characters. The translation is acceptable, but the localization is terrible. Having at least a passing familiarity with the Japanese language myself, the game dialogue is riddled with lines that make no sense in English, but are perfectly cogent if you spend any time in Japan. What's worse is that many of these have English equivalents or at least similar enough idioms to get the point across, but instead you're left with a game that sounds and reads like a bad dub job. But honestly, all of this is just secondary to what I feel is the most egregious crime committed by Shin Megami Tensei. Every single point in the story or gameplay is hammered into your head every 5 minutes by every character you interact with and reinforced with visual cues, notifications, and Navi-like hey listen reminders from your cat. The developers do not trust its players with pattern recognition or deductive reasoning. Every time you think something interesting or subtle just happened, you can guarantee some neon haircut is going to explain exactly what happened for 5 more panels of dry, poorly localized dialogue. At the risk of sounding incendiary, at its core, the game lacks one. There's no through line between its different design aspects and misses wonderful opportunities to marry them together through effective choices, consequences, and fluidity of experience. Not to say the game is without meaning or purpose, but rather that none of its individual design elements seem in service to that purpose. And isn't that really the point of art as a whole? In the end, I feel like Persona 5 Royal and many Persona games fall just short of masterpiece, simply because of a few small choices that lead to massive gulfs between them and perfection. And now for a general pros and cons list. Pros. A very slick take on the common tropes of the JRPG combat systems with spikes in difficulty that reward forethought. Smooth handling and speedy action keep you feeling amped up as you mow down wave after wave of interesting, if a little recycled enemies. Animation, aesthetic, music, and overall style of the game is very dynamic, and they deviate heavily from the roster of generic, high-polygon, photorealistic AAA titles common to the industry. The character growth mechanics are engaging and satisfying and do a great job of telling complex character stories in little snippets, and the character stories themselves are interesting and well told within the confines that the game sets. Persona 5 has some compelling messages to tell about modern life as a teenager/young adult and asks some challenging questions about exploitation as it relates to age and power dynamics. Megami Tensei has never shied away from important cultural discussions, and Persona 5 Royal is no exception. Now for the mixed points. Persona 5's core gameplay loop is centered around Skinner box mechanics, which are pleasant but quite manipulative. This can be good or bad depending on your personal preferences. Megami Tensei creates a fascinating and original world, relative to other creators, but Persona 5 does feel a little recycled in a series that's known for similarly unusual ideas and game design. Persona 5's got that strong Japanese feel. Now this might rub some people the wrong way, but it's very much a selling point for those who can't get enough of that sweet, sweet waifu lifestyle. And now for the big nasty cons. While the character stories are interesting, the characters themselves are two-dimensional, with little more than window dressing around a standard host of anime archetypes. Persona 4, by contrast, had far more compelling characters, though they tackled less culturally relevant issues. The developers do not trust their players. You are assumed to be incompetent in a game that is so simplistic a toddler could muddle through. It even has a difficulty setting that is so easy that they have to lock you into it once you've started, despite the fact that you can change difficulty settings from all the others. Gameplay is very stop and start, and you are never in control of the pace. Holidays, planned events, interruptions, and optimal choices and so on create a feeling that you are constantly on rails and your only choice is which direction you look. Story, plot, combat, and social mechanics are all separate experiences, to such an extent that you feel like you're taking breaks from gameplay to watch an anime play out, complete with filler episodes. In summation, Persona 5 Royal, like most Persona games, is a finely tuned engine, designed to extract engagement from 9-to-5ers with only a few hours a day to devote to gaming. It's more refined and polished than it is well designed or innovative, and panders to the lowest common denominator. If you need to feel like you're in control of the pace of your play, or if you prefer subtlety in your story and need narrative to be woven into gameplay, you're probably not going to love it. That being said, it's a solid game, and I for one got a lot of enjoyment out of it. You shouldn't walk away from this thinking I hated or wouldn't recommend Persona 5 Royal or any Persona game. Instead, understand that the greatest respect we can pay to something we care about is to see how it can improve. Moreover, remember that just because you like or hate something doesn't mean that it isn't worth experiencing. Thank you for listening.